Okay. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have you. Be
I'm so
chatting.
excited to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me, Kim.
Of course. So, to my audience, this is Jen Walters, and she's a Feng Shui consultant and self care mentor. So, she's going to talk to us today about all things Feng Shui and self care. And we tried to create some fun questions to have an interesting conversation about it. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Jen. How would your parents describe what it is that you do?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think that my mom was really interested in the home and in energy. My dad actually installs carpet. So he's definitely into the home, but in a much more tangible way. Whereas my mom worked for Apple Computer and was much more into just like energy and other things. So I think for my mom, she would describe what I do as working with the energy of the home. And I think my dad would just think, you rearrange things.
Good old dad, right? Gotta love it.
Exactly. Very tangible. Yes. You move things around.
So funny. Okay. Well, great. Well, you do. You do move things around. That is true. Um,
Yeah,
and
I do.
yeah. Who do you feel benefits most from the services you provide? What kind of person?
I love working, especially with women, but people who are at a point of transition, so that maybe someone who is looking to move into a new career, or somebody who's becoming a parent or looking to grow a family. So those moments of transition, I work a lot with people who are calling in a new relationship or new opportunities, going to school. So a lot of those transition points. And so I always joke that it's like a feng shui fresh start. So people who are moving from kind of one world to another, because our environments can codify the energy of where we've been. And so when we get in and we work with the energy and move things around, it actually can open up new opportunities. So we kind of create these patterns of our behavior and our habits in our homes. And then when we shift those around, it makes those changes so much easier and those transitions so much easier to create something new. So it's all about new opportunities, I think.
Interesting. And this question's kind of piggybacks on that, but what do you think is kind of the one of the takeaways that your clients have that's unexpected for them?
Oh my goodness. The thing I hear the most is that it's like therapy for your home. And so I think, like, I'm thinking of a client that I was working with a few weeks ago who, she and I were talking about making space for a new relationship. And she was ready. She's in her mid 40s. One relationship had ended. She's ready to bring in a new relationship. And she was looking around her home as we were talking. And she realized, as I was saying, like, you need a place for a partner to sit, like, you need a place for a partner to store their things in order for their energy to feel welcome in the home. And she realized, she was like, Jen, I don't even think I have enough space for me in my home. Like, I haven't made space for who I'm becoming, coming out of this old relationship, through most of her 40s and her 30s. She realized that she hadn't really even considered making a new fresh space for herself, and not just jumping ahead to the next relationship and making space for that, but really making space for who she wanted to become in this big transition that she's in. So I think a lot of the ahas tend to be around how we use our space, and how much our history is involved in how we use our space. A lot of it becomes very tangible. And so I had another client that I was working with several months ago who, she also was this idea of space for herself. And she said she just felt like she didn't have enough room and she thought she needed to declutter. But she actually didn't have very much clutter when I went to her house. So it was funny. She had these very large furniture pieces that were from her family. And so there were a lot of old stories that were related to the pieces. And so I think the surprise for her was realizing just how much these tangible things are talking to us all the time. And that because we have these narrators in our mind that are telling these stories, it's the default mode network. I do a lot of research around the mind. We have these narrators, these storytellers in our mind. And so we may think something's not talking to us, that it's not a big deal. And yet every time she saw this piece of furniture, it was like, oh, that's the sister I had this disagreement with, or that's from my aunt who, we had this challenging relationship. And so when we surround ourselves with that kind of energy, it feels really heavy and like there's not a lot of space for who we are and really for who we want to become, who we want to express ourselves as.
That's so interesting. Oh my goodness.
It's fascinating. Yes.
No. Well, so let's kind of circle back to kind of what I do. Why do you think feng shui would be important in a closet?
Oh, I love feng shui in closets. Oh my goodness. I think it goes back to this idea of self-expression. I really think about fashion and what we choose to put on our bodies, having this really beautiful energy of self-expression. And when we look at what feng shui associates with the closet, a lot of it's about identity and how we see ourselves and how the selves that we project out into the world. So who we want to show up as. And there's so much that we can do. I always talk about in our homes, environmental affirmations and having things that anchor in the feelings and the experiences that we want to be having. And I think the closet is such a beautiful, tangible way to anchor in those states, those emotional states and those experiences. So I think about the 5 elements. So when I want to feel really grounded, I move towards earth tones and things that have a kind of a yin quality. So more texture, more pattern, feels very grounding. And when I want to be, really higher energy, then I might move towards colors associated with the fire elements or things that are smooth textures that are more yang. The lines can be maybe sharper and cleaner. So I think the closet is such a fun place to play with some of these same tools from feng shui and a way to really nourish ourselves and have fun expressing ourselves in a different way. And that identity, that self-expression and identity. So I love closets. I love getting into closets.
I love closets too, and I'm a big
Yeah.
fan. I really think that our clothes have so much feeling associated with them, that our clothes can make us feel a certain way. And my whole thing is always, if I have people choose their feeling words when we start working together, like, what do you want to feel like, and then what do you want to look like, which are different words. And if a shirt always makes you feel frumpy and you're not going for frumpy, you need to get rid of it. It's the same premise. But I love that, if you will need higher energy, the different colors. I never really thought about it that way, but it makes perfect sense, right? Because it's all energy, it's feelings, it's energy, I don't know.
I feel like we're doing the same thing and just in different ways. Like we're just using different language to talk about how do we feel good about ourselves in our clothes, in our face, in our bodies. So I think, there's so much that you wouldn't think that there's a lot of overlap, but I actually think there's a lot of overlap in what we both do.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's why this is so fun.
Yes.
What makes you feel inspired and like your best self?
Oh my goodness. I think right now I'm in Cape Cod. I normally live in California, but I come out here every summer. And I think for me it's the expansiveness of we're right by a lake and it's being outdoors. It's really like that vastness. There's some really interesting studies on well-being and this sense of vastness that sometimes we get really stuck in again, the like really small stories within our mind and how we see ourselves. And there's interesting studies that say that when we're in an environment where it's more expansive, that the vistas or like awe-inspiring environments, so oceans and mountains and looking at stars, really are help us kind of put ourselves in perspective, and that we don't feel as not necessarily as important, but that it puts things in perspective, so that all those little things that kind of get to me raising two kids, the little irritations, that those things, when I'm here by the water and the forest and the beaches, that a lot of that, because I'm in such an expansive space, that it gets back into perspective for me. So I feel really good when I'm outdoors, and here on the Cape, it's amazing.
I bet. It's on my bucket list, as we've discussed. It's on my list of places to go. And anything with water for me does that. Like any kind of ocean or lake, or it is something about the water.
There
I
really is.
Yeah, it's so big and massive. It just really makes you it grounds you. It's like, okay, this, if this can all work itself out, I can figure out my deal here. I got
It's
it.
amazing, isn't it? I love that. Yes.
So kind of, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that it's just refreshing, isn't it? To not feel that it's all so important, that
Yeah.
some of these little details that feel important, like when you get to the ocean, it just feels like, no, it's small. Like it just kind of rearranges the order of things. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It truly is. Um, what do you do for fun outside of work?
Oh my gosh. I kayak here on the lake. It's amazing. It's so much fun. There's swans, there's lily pads. It's really magical. I also love to paint with my kids. So we
Hmm.
do acrylic painting together. We have easels that line up, and we paint together, which is a lot of fun. And then I'm a certified yoga teacher, actually, and I train meditation teachers. So I think there's also that piece of my wellness that feels like a lot of fun, which is practicing yoga and meditating and just really kind of grounding myself feels really good.
I love that. Do you teach yoga to, or do you just take yoga? You teach yoga.
I I've taught yoga in the past. With the pandemic, it all moved online, and so I've mostly been teaching Feng Shui and doing Feng Shui consultations online, because it's hard to get time, and that's probably where I feel I can serve best. But I used to work with a really wonderful group of seniors,
Mm.
and I'd love, once we can all be together again, to work with them. I taught them yoga twice a week, and it's so much fun. And again, it's another thing that kind of puts yourself back in perspective when you're doing yoga with like 85-year-old women, that like your little things that bother you don't seem so, they're kind of like, you know what, you're still young.
Yeah.
So much is going to change between now and then. It just helps. I love being around people in their 80s. Like, it's just so much fun to like have that perspective shift. It's
Yeah.
really good.
My grandma died late last year. She was 101. And
Mm.
so it was
Wow.
always interesting to have a conversation with her, because she would say that, she thought I was a baby, because my grandma looked really good for her age. And she used to say, everyone thinks I'm 85, which is hilarious, right? Because like that's a compliment. But it was to her. When you're
Love
101,
it.
that is a compliment. But she just, I was such a baby, and just like, you've got all your, like, she would just really kind of boil stuff down for me. And I miss that. I miss her, but I miss that about her. Just that, you know, that great perspective on life. I always say we should live life
Yes.
backwards. We would appreciate it more and be so much happier and more compassionate and understanding of one another. But we don't.
I love that perspective though, Kim. I think that's fantastic. I love that. I'm going to at least try to live life backwards. Like,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, we can try.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna work on my mindset and try that. That's a fabulous mantra. I love it.
Yeah. So, in that vein, if you were a new color in the crayon box, what color would you be and why?
I love, so I have, it's funny because they're complementary colors. I love blues and I love oranges. So I don't know, like, I don't know which side to pick. I think today, because I'm feeling really exuberant, I would probably pick something in the orange side, something more in that palette. Um, what I call it, though, maybe I would call it exuberance, right?
I
The
love it.
color could be exuberance. Orange just feels really um, vivifying to me and very, very uplifting. And so I love, it's a fire and earth when we talk about the five elements. So it's got some grounding to it, but it's also got kind of this spark that I'm always drawn to. And then the blues are, depending on the shade of blue, it's wood or water element, and so that's kind of that more nourishing and just like more like stability and calm. So when I need that energy, I really love the whole blue spectrum. What are your favorite? What would you be?
Well, I am a green. I love green. I'm a total sucker for green. Green anything I love. Um, so yeah, green would be my color. And
I love it.
I'm just drawn to I like it's earthy and it can be warm at the same time. It can be cool. It just I don't know. It also looks good on me. Like it's a complementary color to my skin tone. But even just if I see it on other people or on, walls and things, I love green. I'm just drawn to it.
Oh, green is fabulous. Yes. Green is fabulous. So that's a wood element color, which I
Okay.
can see that for you because it's a very expansive wood element is very expansive. So, and it's like enthusiasm, but not like fire. There's
Mm.
kind of a flexibility to it. So I love that for you.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool.
Sticking with green. Um, all right. So in my prior life, I sold out of home advertising. So billboards and buses and things. So this is kind of a fun, question about, and it involves my prior life. Uh, if you were to run a billboard, what would you put on it and what would it say?
Hmm. I think I would put flowers. I love flowers as there's a lot of research around well-being in flowers. So it's funny, there's always like my top three recommendations when somebody comes to me for like self-care mentoring. And one of them, the one that always surprises people is flowers. And so I think I would have an assortment of flowers, like a print of flowers, and then I would like a saying like stop to smell the roses. Because there's so much in like the essence of flowers that's really it's just great for our well-being. They lift our spirits. The scent like is very calming to us. So there's so much. I think even just the research is fascinating around this, but even just images of flowers or images of nature have the same effect because our brain thinks in representations that even just a picture like a landscape can have that same kind of calming effect as being there in person. So I think flowers are amazing. They're such an amazing tool. I've got my hydrangeas right here from the yard.
Beautiful.
They're just an amazing tool for well-being. So I think flowers would be my billboard. Give
We had a
everybody a little bit
client
of
who wanted to do a living billboard. And they wanted to put flowers. They wanted to put
oh,
succulents, flowers, like all kinds of things. And we looked into it, but we couldn't make it happen because we were at the mercy of the landlord. And so you would have to have water
yes.
running up there, and they're like, yeah, no.
What a great idea, though. I love it. I love it.
Happy to drive by and see like actual flowers, like three-dimensional. Um,
Oh,
so you mentioned there's three things that I was going to ask you that too, like your three top care things. What are the three things you said? Flowers. What are the other two? Can you share that with us?
definitely. So flowers for sure. And that's one of the easiest to bring in. Also working with the breath. So even just observing the breath, what we observe changes. And the breath actually is one way to massage the vagus nerve, which runs up to the limbic system. So I train meditation teachers in neuroscience. So I know I'm kind of geeking out here for a second, but so when we breathe, the vagus nerve is almost like a tree itself that runs through the central nervous system. It's not part of the spine, but it runs parallel. And then it branches like tree roots through the diaphragm. And so when we take the time to slow down the breath and to breathe into the diaphragm, it actually communicates up to the limbic system, which is the calming area of the brain. And so we can actually calm ourselves just by paying attention to the breath. It's amazing. And then the last thing that's also really simple is simply just drinking more water. People are always surprised that hydration has such a huge effect on how we feel. And the research on it is fascinating in that so many of the processes that happen in our brains and in our bodies require fluid. And so it can have a huge impact on our mood, on our headaches, if we're somebody who gets headaches frequently, how we feel as far as our energy levels. And so I think flowers and paying attention to the breath and hydration, those are my top three, just super simple, easy to do. I have flowers in my garden, so those are free. We're going to breathe anyway. So if we pay attention to it, it's a really nice way to kind of calm ourselves and center ourselves. And most of us have, even with the drought, we have access to water. And so those are just three simple, really easy ways to take care of ourselves and nourish ourselves.
I love it. I'm terrible about water. I try and I'm terrible about it. So
it's interesting because you don't necessarily have to drink a lot of water. So there's lots of ways to bring in more hydration. I do recommend people use a straw, like a metal straw or a bamboo straw, because you tend to take in more if you drink through a straw. But it can even be adding more juicy foods. So in the winter, it can be soups and stews and other things that have liquid. And in the summer, like right now, the fruit and the vegetables are phenomenal. And so even just making a plate like with some watermelon or some cantaloupe that, sometimes we think, oh, I've got to drink water, but it can even happen through just really simple things like eating things that have more fluid in them makes a big difference. So that's one I use, especially with kids. Kids don't necessarily love to drink water.
No.
So when I work with moms who are trying to get their kids more hydration, we talk a lot about straws and eating things that have more fluid. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a big straw fan too. My facialist told me one time about the straw thing. And it's easier.
Yes.
It's easier to get it down.
Definitely. Even if we're out and we have to wear masks now too, it's easier to get it in there and tuck it under the mask and sip a few sips and then
the mask thing.
Yes.
Well, this was lovely, Jen. I so appreciate you coming on here today to chat with me. Can you share with us how we can find out more about you and get in touch with you and get on your email list and all those fun things?
Definitely. So one of the easiest ways is to DM me. It's just me that runs my business. So DM me on Instagram. So I'm at Modern Maenads, and that's MODERN, and then Maenads, MAENADS. I have a website that's also modernmaenads.com. The Maenads were actually from Greek mythology. They're a group of women who would go outdoors and kind of get back in touch with nature. They leave kind of these roles and rules behind, and they're known for kind of clearing more space. And so it really aligns with what I'm trying to do, is making more space for women to take care of ourselves. both in our environments and in our well-being. So that's where the name came from, the Modern Maenads. And then you can also email me. I'm at Jen Walthers at modernmaenads.com. And then I can just add you to my mailing list as well.
Okay. And I'll have all of this below. The blog post. I'll
Fantastic.
have everything. So if anybody missed that, you can just click the links below to get in touch with Jen, because she's fascinating. I'm on her email list, and it's great information, and it's also tips, like things you can do right now to just feel a little bit better. That's all we can all do, right?
That's all we can do. And honestly, looking at how the brain works, it's the small shifts that we do that we're able to do consistently rather than the big changes we try to implement. Even when we're talking about feng shui, very small tweaks can end up really having a huge difference in the home. Same thing with our well-being, that I think we all want kind of these big changes, but it's really hard to do the work to keep those big changes and to live up to those big expectations of ourselves. And then we think poorly of ourselves, or we beat ourselves up. And so focusing on just small, simple shifts, like keeping flowers, on your desk, or drinking, 1 cup more water today than you did yesterday. Those small things can make such a huge impact over time on how we feel, our felt experience of our life. And so same thing with our fashion, right? In our closets, that it's about those small changes that make you feel really fabulous in what you wear. Those small shifts over time, that we don't need to go out and get a whole new wardrobe at once. It's really about tweaking what we have and bringing in a few new things. So
Yeah.
small changes, it's fantastic.
Shifting things around a little. So anyway.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, I'm going to go get myself a glass of water and
Yes.
go pick some
It is
flowers
always
in
so
the
much
garden.
fun to talk to you.
It is so
Yes.
fun to talk
I
to you.
had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. And everyone, reach out, get on Jen's list, get in her world. You won't be sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.